Well, hey, today on the show, we are going to have a singer-songwriter. He's also the worship pastor over at Grace City Church here in Lakeland, Florida, here to talk to us about some conspiracy theories and his new music. Come on, let's welcome Chase Wagner. Well, what's up, brother? How are you?
I am doing great today. How are you, Alec?
Dude, I am great. I am so happy to have you on the show, man. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you. I just love hanging out with you anywhere. So on the show is great too.
Of course, man. I was thinking about this as you were going to be on the show this evening. You are the person just about maybe 2 or 3 months ago that finally convinced me to get on TikTok.
Wow.
And you've taken away the rest of my free time.
Wow.
So thank you.
Yeah, it sucks you in and like no other. It's the Chinese magic of it. It
Dude,
just really sucks you in.
I will say that the algorithm is perfect.
Do you think they're going to ban it?
I feel like that was like heavy news like a couple of months ago, right?
I think they might. The more I read about it, the more I'm like, oh, this might actually happen.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, maybe I'm not up to date on news as much as I should be lately, but I feel like there's so many other things going on in the world right now that maybe they've just kind of put this to bed for a little bit.
Maybe by the time this episode drops, TikTok will be banned. It's possible.
Can you imagine? We're just pumping it up on this TikTok
It's
and
very
nobody
possible.
can use it.
I think it's because it's the first social media successful massive thing that's not a US thing. So even their whole thing is we can keep using it if an American company buys it.
Yeah.
Like I think they just hate. I think Meta and lobbyists and all these people that are in with Meta are just like trying. That's the problem. Is that it's not American.
What's crazy is this is actually, I just thought of this. This is the first social media that I was not forced to create. So back when I was a college student, before SU days, I went to CSU, which is a local college in Columbus, where I grew up. And I took like I don't know if it was like intro to tech or something like that. But one of the assignments was I had zero social media at this point. My life was just like Zen. You know what I mean? I had no online presence. Yeah. And one of the like homework assignments was create a Facebook page, create a YouTube account, create a Twitter account, create an Instagram. Wow. I had to do all 4 of those things. I had 0 of them.
Wow.
And I remember like doing that, and all of a sudden, maybe I had Facebook.
You had more
maybe
anxiety.
That was a little
all of a
bit
sudden
early.
you had more anxiety.
Yeah, but all of a sudden I was like, man, I really need to figure out which filter I need to use on this picture.
You know what's funny? I have a similar. I had a Old Testament class at Biola. I went to Bible Institute of Los Angeles, which is actually incredible professors. That was the best part of it. Incredible, just Bible insight. But my first semester Old Testament class, he made us create a Twitter. Yeah. And explain to us what hashtags was. This was 2009. Yeah. So he's telling me what hashtags are. And so during the class live, he always had Twitter open. And if you tweeted at him with the hashtag,
it would pop up on the screen.
BS 109 or whatever the class code was, you'd hashtag it, and then you could tweet in a live question at any time. Because it was a class of maybe 200 kids. Yeah. And that's when I learned about hashtags, and I had to create it. That's why I created a Twitter.
That is crazy.
And Paige created one because she was in that class too. And that's her picture from Twitter is my picture of her in the phone in my phone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Paige is my wife, by the way, for those listening, whatever.
Dude, that's crazy. I wonder what that professor thinks about that now. Like so many years later, it's like...
Professor Volkmar was his name. I need to look him up, see what he's doing now. But
I haven't used a hashtag. I'm not great at social media, man. I do every now and then post stuff because I love my kids and my wife, and I'll post stuff about them. But
you know what's been helping me with social media lately is ChatGPT. So
really?
I'll do, I do music. So I'll go, what's the best way to promote? What are the best hashtags today?
Ooh, okay.
To promote my music on Instagram Reels. It sends me the 10 for the day to put on there. Yeah. And then I'll go on TikTok, and then I'll go, what are the best ones for TikTok? It sends me, and it changes every day. Here's the 10 to use for TikTok today. Yeah. So you learn something, but
dude, that's crazy. ChatGPT writes a majority of my emails at work throughout the day. Yeah. Which just makes it like so much nicer, dude. I'm like, hey, this is what they've told me. This is what I need to relay to them.
People are freaking about AI, and I feel like AI hype right now is what metaverse hype was maybe 2 years ago. Everyone's talking about NFTs, the metaverse, and it's like all that stuff. It's like, no, I don't have.
But it ends up not being that big of a deal.
Right.
Like it's like you either use it or you don't.
I feel like
you
that's
know?
where AI is right now. Where it's like, oh, it's going to ruin the world. It's going to take over. Everyone's talking about AI. And I'm like, no, I think it's going to help us come up with hashtags and write your email. I don't think it's going to take over the world.
No, I think it's like it's a select few of people who get into that kind of stuff. Speaking of this, I want to shout out, like, I have a buddy. His name is Jonathan Wright. I'll figure out his actual YouTube handle by the end of this, but I think it's just like Jonathan Wright is how you can find him. He's a YouTuber doing great. He did a series where he attended a metaverse church for like a month or so. It is wild. Oh, it's the Wild West.
I know Craig Rochelle does that with Life Church. They do that with like a metaverse campus. And
I imagine theirs is probably like well structured, organized. The one that he went to was very just like loose cannon. But anyways, but yeah, dude, TikTok has definitely changed a little bit of my life, my little bit of my free time. Like the algorithm we've talked, this is how you introduced it to me. The algorithm gets me better than Instagram. Instagram started showing me just like random stuff that I did not care about, where like TikTok was focused towards like some of my interests, like things like we've talked about this before. Like, yeah, it gets me to a T. Part of that is like, and you and I talk about this from time to time, is like conspiracy theories.
Right.
Conspiracy theories.
That's TikTok.
Sometimes some just like news, whatever the case may be, it gets me.
Well, unbelievable. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
The conspiracy theory lately, I feel like, has been like the Leviathan thing. I know you sent me that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, your wife talked to me about it at work.
Yeah.
That there's a Leviathan waking up, and that's why all these whales and dolphins are screaming, washing ashore. I don't know.
We have this running conversation, and we've always been on the same side. Like we've never changed positions in our whole marriage. Is like, what's easier to believe, Bigfoot or aliens? And for her, it's Bigfoot. For her, it's like it's easier to believe in Bigfoot.
Sure.
For me, it's so much easier to believe in aliens. It's such a larger span of universe that's out there that actually this could be like a legitimate thing. Like with all the tech and everything we have now, I feel like we would have caught a better like footage of an actual Bigfoot.
I'm on book 2 right now. The first book is 800 pages. The second book is like 650. I'm on book 2 right now of a series called The Secret Machines, Secret with a K, by Tom DeLonge, lead singer of Blink-182.
I was about to say, that sounds so familiar.
He wrote it with the head of like the English department at one of these North Carolina major universities. But it's all the stories are true. You would love this, Alec. All the stories are true. And it follows a few characters and they intertwine. He says all the stories are true. They've just changed the names. And it's all about aliens and UFOs, UAPs. You would love it.
Yeah. There's so much stuff out there. So just as like a general of like why, it would be interesting to talk about like why do we think we get so interested in this kind of stuff? For me, like conspiracy theory documentaries and stuff like this is sometimes just like the easy, mindless thing for me to like throw on TV if I'm just like don't know what to watch. But there's at some point for me with the alien talk where it's like everybody always tries to get like, right. Anybody who maybe has had like this kind of experience, people try to paint them as like, oh, they're crazy. They're looking for attention. They're looking for money, whatever, royalties, whatever the case may be. It's like, at what point is like so many people are having this story where it's like, could they all be that crazy?
Do you want to know my opinion on the alien thing?
Yes, I would love to.
Because I've read these books. A lot of it's about back engineered craft. Tom was very involved with like getting the Tic Tac footage out there off the coast of San Diego. If you ever saw the Tic Tac,
so he's super into this.
Yeah, like he's met with people in the Department of Defense and people at the Pentagon. His To the Stars Academy thing. If you want to know what I think it's all real, and it is all spiritual. And that's actually the angle that the book ends up taking. I don't want to give away too much, but that it's chariots of heaven. It's all angelic and demonic.
I was literally about to ask, like, how do you feel like this like connects to someone like us who's like believers, like, right?
Right.
There's actually an incredible podcast that,
Oh yeah, I think you told me about it.
yeah, it's called Haunted Cosmos.
Yes.
It's these two dudes. One of them I know is a pastor. The other one I think is on staff. Either way, they talk about like all these different conspiracy theories out there. And a lot of them have to do with aliens or Bigfoot or Skinwalker Ranch, which is a
crazy
wild one. But rather than just going like, oh, here's this crazy story and there's probably aliens out there and stuff that we just don't understand. It's like they bring it to, oh no, there's actually probably like a spiritual reality to this. And like, here's how we see some things that correlate in scripture,
Right.
that could actually explain something. Like they don't like say like, oh, we know it all.
Yeah.
But just giving like ideas, it's a great listen, dude.
Yeah, you look at Elijah, you look at different things in the scripture, and I think definitely it angelic and demonic vehicles exist.
Yeah.
And that they actually have vehicles.
Isn't that crazy?
We're getting deep quick.
We are getting deep, dude. What do you think it is that draws us into that kind of stuff?
I think that social media exacerbates it for sure.
100%. That's a great. Do you feel like, or maybe just like, I wonder if there were even conspiracy theories or like to the level of there are today prior to the internet?
Yeah,
Like,
I think for better and for worse. Obviously, we've seen that play out for the worse. But I think that when things happen that our minds can't comprehend, or things are too tragic for us to comprehend, that we don't think the world is actually that tragic, we go for the conspiracy theories. And I think social media really, is steroid for that.
Well, because I bet like prior to internet, you had these sort of like anxieties or worries about like whatever, but it had to end at that, right? Like you couldn't couldn't lose your mind for 2 hours.
Yeah, I remember listening to Coast to Coast with my dad, which was like an AM radio show that was like all they did was talk about conspiracies, but it was on late at night on AM radio. My dad would turn it on when we were driving back from Safeco Field, like a baseball game or something in Seattle, and we would listen to it late at night. But yeah, social media is just crack for that.
Dude, I don't know. I'd love to hear what your favorite like conspiracy theory is as of late. Mine, I've shared this with you so many times, because I feel like when I look at all the like wild theories or stories that I've heard in the past, the one that always stands out to me that I actually genuinely believed for a while was the Paul McCartney is dead theory.
Oh yeah.
And
talk about it. Explain it for those that haven't heard.
For sure. So this all goes back to when I was a student. So again, like back to college days, a student at CSU, I took an intro to music class.
Cool.
And the intro to music class was Intro to the Beatles.
Oh, that's cool. The professor just loved the Beatles.
No, actually. This is crazy. So it was the dean of the whatever, that department or whatever, loved the Beatles. My professor hated the Beatles.
Wow.
So, but it was like, he did it because he was told.
What's the hate? What did he not like about it?
He was a real quirky guy, dude. Like he said some choice things that I won't say because this is a family show.
Oh wow.
But like he was just a very like, he's a very interesting dude, and I bet he was probably way more into jazz music, to be honest with you, than he was into like Beatles, which he probably would have considered pop. He showed us one day, like he made a Black Eyed Peas song in under 5 minutes.
Interesting.
On his music. And that's probably true. Like you could actually do that, but he was just very against like popular music, whatever. But he was forced to teach this class, and he made that very apparent. So for like, I think this was like 2 weeks of this class, we watched this documentary called Paul is Dead. And here's the whole idea behind this documentary is Paul McCartney, again, this is all conspiracy, but Paul McCartney died in a car accident sometime in the 60s, right? This is, I think I'm getting my years right, but like sometime in the 60s, Paul McCartney dies in a car accident late at night. The band is on this meteoric rise at the moment. Like they see like, oh man, they are going to be huge. And so it's this problem where they're like, if Paul is dead, this ride is over. And so they hide it. They find this. And I will say this, if you go find the documentary, I think it's on It's either on Netflix or it's on Amazon. It's on one of those two. I think it's free, so it may be worth the time. It was compelling enough to me at the time. But they find this guy that was a lookalike in Canada. Again, all conspiracy, but they find this guy that was a lookalike in Canada. They bring him over. He is now Paul. And everything that they make prior to that has like innuendos and themes of Paul McCartney is dead. So if you look at the Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Band cover, there's like apparently the idea there is that it is a funeral procession.
Wow.
Like it's a funeral for him. He's in the middle, and there's a badge on his shoulder that says, I can't remember, but you can't see all of the badge, and it says OPP. That's what it actually says, I think. But all you could see was the OP, and people assumed that it meant officially pronounced dead. So they thought they just assumed that was the next letter. There was other things. So like on the Abbey Road record, and I think at this point, I wonder if the Beatles knew. Like, I wonder if they knew that, like, okay, people are catching on to this. Let's just play along with this. Mm-hmm. Like, Paul McCartney is there. He has like a cigarette pointing down in one hand, which the documentary says, like, at that time was like described as like the nail in the coffin. People called like a cigarette like a nail in your coffin.
Wasn't he like barefoot too?
He was barefoot too, which supposedly is like it's like a grieving ritual in Portugal or something like that.
But
whatever.
It's how they bury some people, like in a suit, no shoes, no jewelry.
Well, because I'm assuming maybe you didn't see that half of like when the casket's open. Right. I don't know, but and then there's other things where it's like, you know, John's at the front and he's in all white, so he's the priest. You know, Ringo's behind him, he's in all black, so he's like, you know, a bearer. And then George was behind him, so he's in like jeans and he's like a grave digger. Yeah. So it's all these things, dude. And if you watch this documentary and listen to it long enough, it's kind of compelling. Where you're like, dude, they must have known. I feel like the only explanation is maybe they knew. They knew and they were like, let's just play along with this. Some people say that dude, what's the song where it goes, shoo,
yeah, you play it backwards, says Paul's dead or something like that.
Well, not even backwards. They say that whole like shoo is like actually conspiracy again. Like John Lennon, he's saying, shoot me, and pulling down the volume at the last second because he was so like riddled with guilt for covering up Paul's death.
Interesting.
Crazy, right? It's so intricate. I knew
some of that. I didn't know all that.
Yeah. That's my favorite because, dude, after watching that, again, I was a very gullible. Maybe that speaks to me, too, where I just can fully bought into it after 2 weeks. Yeah. But
big believer.
I was fully into it, dude. Is there one like that's like gripped you?
Man, I am a big believer like you, too. Like I spoke at church the other day and I was like, hey, the Bible's full of witches, rainbows, giants, you know, resurrection, dead people, zombies. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, I believe it all. I actually, like, how much of it do I believe? I believe all of it. I'm actually a true believer. Yeah. So I'm, you know, man, I don't know why people want to talk to me about conspiracies a lot of the times. I mean, one today that was so interesting is Stranger Things 5 is about to come out. They've been working on Stranger Things now for like 10 years, which is crazy. It's going to come out in 2025. It's crazy. These kids have been in this show for 10 years. But the Montauk Project, so like all of it is based upon a real life thing called the Montauk Project, which is in the Northeast, I believe, and where they literally have this huge satellite. It's abandoned now. You can go watch like people breaking into the abandoned site, and it's this place full of hospital beds where they were doing, the government was actually doing study on consciousness, and they think they were working on kids, and that all these kids now are grown up, and some of them have given testimony, but that they're working on consciousness and teleportation, leaving your mind to go somewhere else, and it's all real. It's called the Montauk Project. You can look it up, and that's what Stranger Things, 11 and is based off of, which is very interesting.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Did you watch that series?
Stranger Things?
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
I'm an ultimate
Is it
fan.
like, I think I can remember this right, season 4 kind of, or maybe it's like a couple seasons there. It's that building where the dude in the Camaro kind of goes. Is that right?
It's that government building where they were testing on 11.
Oh, yes. Like
they were
from
testing
the original.
on the dude that ended up being the bad guy in season 4, but all of them as kids, and they all got their numbers, tattooed on them. But all that's, I guess, real.
Yeah. What's crazy is too, you kind of hinted at this too. Like here's where we're going. With
I was
this.
just
So
talking
buckle
about
up.
that. I was just talking about that one today. That was the one that was
it's fresh on your mind.
Yeah, fresh on my mind.
Is like the reality of like ghosts. Like I feel like that leads into like, man, our place is haunted, right?
Right.
Like I do think I just remember, like, obviously, Madeline and I and our family lived in PA for a little, like a chunk of change, like a little time there, and there was this abandoned psych ward.
Whoa.
In Harrisburg, like right there, and everybody. I never actually got the chance to go in it. I don't know if I would, dude. I feel like that stuff
terrifying,
freaks me out.
No thanks.
But like everyone says there that there's just crazy stuff that happens in that building, like all the time.
No
and
thanks.
like the way that, kind of referencing back to that other podcast, like Haunted Cosmos, they talk about that a lot, where it's like, hey, like hauntings, the way that, like, for lack of a better term here, maybe a churchy term, is like the world like describes like hauntings is like, oh, it's a ghost of a spirit of somebody who couldn't pass into the afterlife.
Sure.
But the way that they would describe it is, man, there's like, there has been some form of wrong or evil or whatever you want to call it that has existed in this place for so long. So like the one that I'm referencing to specifically is like Skinwalker Ranch. Like it was a place of like prior to that, it was Native American. There was like some maybe pagan stuff that went on there, whatever the case may be, like talking years back. Like, but like stuff that wrong, evil, whatever the case may be, that just existed in this geographic space for so long that it's just connected somehow.
Air.
You know what I mean?
When it comes to ghosts, Alec, there's several proof texts on that in the Bible. One is to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Mm-hmm. So I'd always go there. Also, another scripture says it's appointed for man to die once and then judgment. So you have those scriptures. I go, yeah, I stand on those, that ghosts aren't real. But with that, I mean, you brought up Skinwalker Ranch. I do think that the Bible talks about princes of the air and principalities, and I think that there's other religions that are worshiping real gods and worshiping real princes of the air and real spiritual beings that aren't the Lord of Lords, but are Lord over their area on earth. And so that's what I would think of Skinwalker Ranch.
I love this conversation. Have you or a friend ever had like a experience with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, Bobby Walker, who's our Tampa worship pastor, has seen an actual ghost. But it was during a turbulence part of his life, but he's seen one appear in his room. He said he saw a bird. He woke up one morning and a bird was flying into the window, sliding glass window, over and over again till it was killing itself.
I've seen that in movies.
And then he looks over and he saw a hooded figure in his living room. I mean, by the way, he's probably 13, but he'll tell it like it's real life if you ever talk to him about it.
No, he's a trustworthy dude.
And then he told it to scram, and it scrammed.
Scram was the actual word.
That's
used.
very Bobby. Right?
That's very Bobby.
You know Bobby. But he said, I told it to scram, and it scrammed.
Dude, that's crazy. I feel like there was some moments in my life, like in high school, where I thought maybe I had some kind of ghost encounter, but it just ended up being my great grandma that lived with us. Dude, there were moments where she would just pop out of nowhere, and I forget she lived there.
Is there a game called Granny? Bobby, the same guy, was playing I think it's a horror game that you can download on your iPhone called
like
Granny.
Haunted Great Grandma?
Yeah, Granny shows up. It's called Granny.
Dude, I don't know, but man.
I've had sleep paralysis before, really bad at it. When I was like 18 to 20 in community college in Seattle. There was one room in my house that if I fell asleep in it, I would wake up with, if I napped in it, only napped in it, I would wake up with sleep paralysis. So I'd wake up fully aware, but I couldn't move into my body. I'd see my sister or younger sister walk through the room, and I couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
Like I try to say something to her, but I think it was more so a growing part of I think my brain was just growing, or as a part of my development for some reason. In that window, I experienced it. I don't think it was spiritual or weird, or
it was
it's called
development.
It's called the devil sitting on your chest. It's something that's gone on for hundreds of years if you look it up. But But it was very freaky when it happened. But I think it's physical. I think it's biological. I don't think it's a spiritual thing.
What do you do in that moment where you're just laying there and you're like, what?
All you can do is go back to sleep. Yeah, it was very horrifying. I had it a few times, and I just stopped napping in that room.
Dude, that's the way to fix it too.
Right.
Dude, there was a time I just thought of this. Like Madeline and I were first married, and dude, it wasn't even like, I'd be honest, like looking back now, like this is close to 8 years ago. Life wasn't bad. I just think I was allowing so much to like so many things to get into my mind, and I was
like negativity or
negativity 100%. Like I was, working in a job like straight out of college that I didn't necessarily love.
Sure.
And I was thinking like, at the age of what was I, like 25 or 26 or whatever, I was like, this is it for me.
Yeah.
Like this financial aid is all I'll ever have.
Sure.
And so I was letting all this negativity and stuff get into my brain, and it was riddling me, dude, with anxiety. And I never necessarily had a moment like that, but there was a season where like I would wake up in bed and I was positive somebody was in the room with us.
Ugh.
We were married, so obviously Madeline's like laying there next to me, but like I was positive. And dude, I remember her sitting me down one day and being like, you gotta like talk to, Pastor Andrew, you gotta talk to somebody about this. Cause I was sitting in a chair, like the place that I felt most comfortable was sitting in a chair in our living room where my back was to a corner and I could see the whole room. Because I was so paranoid that something was
our
in
minds
our
are
house.
crazy. I think
crazy,
the
dude?
moral of the story is our minds are crazy.
Yeah.
And that's a conspiracy theory. Also, someone wanted to talk to me about today. Our lead pastor has a doctorate in psychology, Christina Gard, and she was talking to me about how we only use 20% of our brains.
Crazy.
And that there's a cult actually that believes that Jesus used 100% of his brain. And so because he was able to use 100% of his brain, that's how he was able to walk through walls. That's how he was able to bring people back from the dead, is that he had actually, our brains can do crazy stuff if we only had access to it.
I feel like there's a part of me where it's like, I don't disagree with that, but I know the next step of where this cult is going is like, we could access 100%.
Right.
Like that's where they're going
We'd
with
all
this.
sit in a circle and really try hard.
Yeah. Hasn't really worked out for a lot of people.
Yeah. But that was when that was a conspiracy theory. I hadn't really heard about that. Maybe he learned that in India, or he learned that in, Jesus learned that maybe in Egypt in his childhood, the unaccounted years that we don't know where Jesus was, maybe.
Yeah. Buckle up for this one. Do you feel like Neuralink, that whole Elon Musk thing, is like trying to tap into because there's a dude right now that actually
I
has
love
it,
watching
right?
it. I followed all of it.
He was on the Joe Rogan podcast. He was on a couple things. Like,
I love it.
that's crazy.
Yeah, I think it has the potential to really help some people.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, we're talking about...
It doesn't make you Jesus.
It talks about in the 60s, they were giving people... in the 60s, we were giving people lobotomies.
Isn't that crazy that like we could go down the list of like historical things, but like the 60s, that's not that long ago.
So in the 60s, they were giving people lobotomies. If you don't know what lobotomy is, basically they take a metal spike and they shove it through your eye cavity into your frontal lobe, and they scramble the front part of your brain.
It's like a hard reset.
But dude, they would do it for people. I mean, how many friends do we know that just had a bad anxiety? Okay, you have a bad anxiety season, a bad depression season. And so what I learned recently, which is fascinating, this isn't a conspiracy, this is true, is that JFK had a little sister that you don't hear about. She had anxiety, depression. She got a lobotomy, and they stopped doing them, obviously, and it ruined her life.
Yeah, I imagine that does ruin your life.
So, but like she was incapacitated. And so that JFK actually shut down a lot of mental hospitals. I mean, how many mental hospitals do you know about? Not a lot anymore.
It was definitely a bigger thing. Like
he shut down mental
being born.
hospitals across America because of what they did to his little sister.
Sheesh.
And and if you look it up, it's all real.
And to think about now, what we know is like, dude, that part of your skull and your brain is like, it's definitely can take some like beat, but like it's actually can be fragile. Like, dude, there's this video that I've seen too of a boxer. I don't know his name, but it's like a sad story where like he was like ripped dude, boxer, one bad punch, dude, and he's kind of a vegetable now. Like, I don't know if that's like wrong to say or not, but he's like, he has to live in a chair. He can't speak,
sad.
stuff like that. But to think about it, like, dude, they were going inside of your brain and scrambling like this, like how much damage that could do. This guy had took one punch.
What's wild is I was talking with our doctorate in psychology today, and she was talking about how your brain can act, like all the trauma people have endured in their brain, and that the rest of your brain can actually make up for it. So if your brain's working the right way, you can lose like half of your brain, but your other side of your brain can learn things that the other side of your brain was doing and make up for it.
Yeah.
My granddad was shot in the head. He was a hunter. He was shot in the head on a hunting trip. Someone thought he was a deer, and he lived till the end of his days with a bullet in his head.
Crazy.
And he always would. He said it sometimes set off metal detectors, whatever. He has scans of it. But that, and his personality was great. I was with my uncle, who's now in his 70s, in California last week, and he was saying he thinks my grandpa was saying some stuff, like some weird stuff in his 80s, and he was like, I think it might have had to do with the bullet in his head.
Like it changes you a little bit.
But I mean, it's pretty cool that he was able to live a normal life. I think that happened to him in his 30s or his 40s, and he lived the rest of his life with a bullet in his head.
That's crazy, dude. I mean, I've heard stories of people that like get in, like they get hit, like random stuff where it kind of scrambles their brain and they become a new person. I think this is secondhand knowledge. I think it's like Joe Rogan show has talked about before, like Roseanne or something like that. Somebody like her story is actually like she got hit. I think it's Roseanne, random, but
She's kind of crazy. Right?
She got hit by a car as a teenager and it like changed who she was. And she was like a normal, like very proper person. And when she got hit by a car, it scrambled who she was. And she became this like super funny, kind of crazy person.
Wow.
And yeah, just to show like how fragile our minds are. Dude, we've gotten on a really fun track with this episode so far.
This is supposed to be conspiracies. It also into mental health.
No, but I love it, dude. I wonder if like, speaking on some of the psychiatry side, I'm sure like our pastor, Christina could speak into this more of like, when the rest of your brain takes over, if that's why like you can forget about some trauma that's happened to you in the past. You know what I mean? It's like, because, and I'm just totally speculating, I have zero idea, but it's like some other parts of your brain start to take over. So like that trauma that's happened to you, that's why like at a young age, maybe you can forget about it,
That's a whole other thing
that's a whole other thing that we're probably not
forgotten memories and
we're probably not qualified to talk about.
Yeah, suppressed memories. I can't go there.
Well, dude, I love talking conspiracy stuff with you and theories and stuff like that. But, dude, I'd also love to talk about some of your music, man.
Sure.
I have always like admired about you is even beyond music is just like the creativity that you bring to, music projects, like your everyday life too. And so maybe like, tell us a little bit about just like kind of what's new and what's coming up with your music.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the worship pastor at Grace City Church in Lakeland, and we planted that church almost 9 years ago, which is crazy to think about. And I lost my voice like post-COVID for like a month, to where I was like typing. I had to go to meetings at church and like I would type in like sentences and have the thing talk for me. It was kind of like a really weird season. I think you were living up north at the time. And I was like, if I ever get my voice back, because when you leave it like for a month, I'm like, I'm going to put out solo music.
Yeah.
So I put out my first record in 2022. It's called Suddenly I Saw You Clearly. And it was fun, man. It was just totally indie rock. I had some hip hop tracks on it. It was just like me just making music I liked, and it did well, man. It was fun to put out, and so I'm currently in the process of putting out my second record right now, and put out a song called "Song in the Room." I have a song releasing in August called "Dagobah System," which is like a Star Wars thing. It's not really about Star Wars, but I wrote it while watching Star Wars, and then
That's awesome.
in the middle of the night, and it's a song about identity. And I think we all kind of struggle with our identity and who we're supposed to be, and so yeah, man, I'm just trying to get my dreams out. And I mean, we were just talking about this before we started recording, but you have things that you feel like you're made to do, and I think for me, music is part of that, and so I just want to be faithful to that. And so yeah, that's part of what I do.
That's awesome, man. I love that. I love specifically too how you said like I'm making music that I like.
Yeah.
You know, I can imagine like I'm not in the same world as you are in that stuff, but like I imagine it's tempting at times or even like hard to tune out like, okay, this is what's popular.
Sure.
This is what's getting
Right.
like, you know, this is like the trend if you want to write like some generic, for lack of a better term, like generic song and, you know, this is what's going on right now. How do you tune out like, okay, this is what's maybe popular. This is, you know, getting, you know, listens or whatever to write music that you love.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what the solo music's been about. You know, like I've made worship music for years, and I'm a staff writer for Capitol Records as well on their Christian side. And so I just am always, I mean, that's a huge part of my life is trying to write the perfect worship song and trying to write the perfect song for church. And it's such an interesting, you know, it's different than being a writer for Capitol on the hip hop side or where it's just like, no, church music has a function. It's supposed to accomplish something in a service.
Sure.
It's supposed to get one part of the service to do a certain thing. And so I've spent, 15 years really like trying to write that perfect church song. And it was kind of in 2022, when I lost my voice, I was like, kind of like, oh, bump that. I'm just going to write like music that, that I just love to listen to. And the music that record outstreamed what in 1 year, what Grace City had done in 8 years. And
Dang,
so it was kind of, that's encouraging, but discouraging at the same time. But of just going, I think
it's both you a little bit.
Yeah. Like, 'cause I love Grace. I love what I do, but realizing, okay, there is a freedom of just going, let's make music that I just love to listen to myself and maybe other people will too.
Yeah. I love that, man. I'd love to hear a little bit about like, what is your, like if somebody listening here maybe is similar boat, right? Like they are musician, they are wanting to kind of pursue like, hey, I'm trying to get, you know, into the music business, trying to write their own stuff. Like, what's your process of like, this is how you put yourself in a creative space to write?
Yeah. I wrote a song with my best friend on the front porch called Living with a Fire, like in 2017. And it was a song that then opened all the industry doors for me.
Yeah.
As far as like becoming a staff writer at a label or whatever. And I think that there's purity in that, right? Like of just writing at home, what you think is cool, with your best friends, trying to keep it in a pure spot like that. Like that's what the industry is after. So I think a lot of people chase industry, clout, views, plays, and all that stuff's fun. There's nothing wrong with that. Also, like music should be like fun. When it stops being fun, like stop doing it. Like,
for sure.
But I think there is a purity of just doing that at home, and then the industry stuff all follows. That would be my advice to people: is that like really a record label can't do anything for you. Like you can sign to a record label, and then like they're all looking for authentic stuff written at home by best friends, like pure creative energy stuff. And so that's what I found, and that's what if you're asking for how I would encourage people, that's how I encourage people is just like try to tap into that non-trying,
authentically you
thing, and that's where the goodness is.
Yeah, dude, there's so many like examples that I could think of, but like when you were saying that, I was thinking of like somebody like a Chris Stapleton, who is like a guy who writes his own music and sings it. I think for the most part,
dude, he's
like,
unbelievable.
Just when you hear him sing and when you hear him like a song that's his, you're like, whew, dude, there was
his voice, man.
This actually may be a bad example because it's not one of his songs, but it's a song that he covered. He covered I Hope You Dance, that song. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
It's an incredible song.
Yeah. And he covered it.
I haven't heard his version of it.
Dude, I was tearing up 100%.
That song makes me tear up anytime I hear it. It's just such a good song.
Yeah. But just the authenticity and like, you're like, man, he is singing this from his soul right now, and I know it.
And as a music lover, I'm just a music lover. So like, you talked about your professor. It's like that maybe didn't like pop music. It's just like, no, dude, in pop, in hip hop, in country, and in rock and roll, there's so many good songs, and good songs exist in all of those that can make you just feel something. And I Hope You Dance is absolutely one of those songs.
Yeah. And I imagine like in every genre, there is the, for lack of a better term, like the this is just a churned out artist. They just sing songs that like maybe like somebody else has written and it's maybe more corporate vibe, whatever. But like every genre also has like someone who genuinely loves that music, or genuinely, I should say, genuinely loves that music, like is writing from their heart and singing something. And that's what, dude, I hear that in your music too.
Thanks,
like
dude.
I love listening to your stuff.
And
because,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead. No.
I would say there's even good stuff in the corporate. Go listen to a great Drake song. Go listen to a great Kanye song. Go look at the amount of writers on them. And it's like something like 18 to 20 writers.
Yeah,
Go listen
a
to
lot
great
of minds came together.
Bieber song. Even those songs that are created in the machine, it's like, man, when you have 20 great people getting together and writing something for one of the greatest artists in the world, there's some brilliance there too. It's
For sure.
so good.
That's so true, man. There's just different ways to do it.
Yeah.
There's tons of ways to do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's exciting to see like the music that you are putting out. I've loved it. And again, coming back to that, like I've felt, you know, I think when you released that album in 2022, we were living in PA and I remember listening to it, not just because like I loved you, but also like, because I feel like sometimes you can do that, right? You know somebody, you listen to their album
and
once.
it means something more.
Yeah. But also I was listening to your album multiple times and not just saying that to gas you up because you're sitting next to me, but like I was genuinely like, oh man, this is fun. Like this is like the music that I need, like church style music that like, or just even, you know, like spiritual music that like builds me up, but I enjoy it.
Cool.
You know? And I loved that about it.
That was something we like tried to do with it too, is we just thought like playlist real estate. So we just thought like, man, can we make a record that's not just for church, but can be on Christian workout, Christian beast mode playlist, you know, indie chill. Like we just thought about like, dude, let's try to go and get like the most playlist real estate we absolutely can. And that was fun too, of just going, like what are the types of music that I love to listen to, and let's kind of put that forward.
The one with the like the hip hop beat to it too, that was Gotta Find a Way, right?
Yep, there's one called Gotta Find a Way. There's one called Say Something too with my friend Jay Monty, who's like literally like I would say this: Christian rap sucks. Like Christian hip hop is not great, but what's exciting about it is we haven't seen the greats of it yet. Yeah. So like,
it's on its way.
So who's great in hip hop, right? You can look back. I mean, hip hop's only been around since the late '80s. So you go, okay, there's these, you know, who's top five? Who are the people that have, okay, Notorious B.I.G., Tupac, Jay-Z. There's like these people that are just like, these are the GOATs. That hasn't happened in Christian rap yet.
No.
But there's a couple people that are doing it so well, where it's so raw and it's so cool. And to me, Jay Monty is one of those. My friend Tori Deshawn is one of those. Indie Tribe. No Big Deal was just on the Radar, which is like an awesome freestyle secular thing that they do. So like that's what's cool and exciting about that space to me, is that like, okay, we haven't seen the greats of it yet.
It's on its way.
Yeah.
Well, even in a way, like two thoughts that I had from there. One is like, in the grand scheme of things, like hip hop is the youngest somewhat like genre out there, right? Maybe in most cases, like it is still like somewhat, like you look back, I think that's like what, 50s, 60s, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So kind of getting into the Christian realm, maybe it taken a little bit longer. But dude, I remember I had friends who were like, prior to like me in high school, like starting to, you know, give my life to Christ and starting to go into church. Like I had friends who were trying to like save me on Christian rap.
Right.
Like they knew I loved
like
Outkast.
Grits.
They knew I
like
loved stuff like
Grits.
that. They were like, bro,
They be listening to Grits.
listen to this. This song's called Praying For You.
Oh.
And I was like, and I don't knock that song. Like I think it's bad. I think it's all right. But like, it was just like, no thanks. Like
there's this really interesting thing happening right now, which is that rock and roll was rock and roll, right? It was this punk rock thing that was like, that's where the rock stars live. And that is the thing that's just totally, you know, counterculture or whatever. Hip hop became that new thing. Hip hop was the new rock and roll.
Yeah.
And now, in an odd way, and it's only going to be more by the time this episode comes out, country.
Oh, 100%.
Is the new rock and roll.
Yeah. Dude, I remember, and I grew up in South Georgia, so it's a little bit different. I think country was just like the norm, you know, but it wasn't cool to listen to. Like it was like
No.
it wasn't the cool thing in school. It was like you listen to hip hop or you listen to like,
But it's
certain rock,
cool
but
right now.
It's so cool right now.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
But to me, I really see hip hop as the second. Country is I mean, Beyonce
Right
put out
now.
a country record. Obviously, what Post Malone's doing is incredible. His record's going to be incredible. Country is the new rock and roll.
Crazy, dude.
Yeah, I couldn't have guessed that.
Well, dude, I think we could probably talk for hours, but
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed this time that we've had together.
Me too, man.
We got 1 more minute left. What is one thing that you'd like to share? It could be an announcement for something you got coming up or just an encouraging word, but for the people listening before we head out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening to this episode, Alec. I think what you're doing is incredible. Thanks for having me on. I just put out a song called Song in the Room. I have a song called Dagobah System that will be out by the time you're listening to this. I have another song called Sometimes I Dream. If you look that up and you just look up Chase Wagner, Sometimes I Dream is coming out end of August. So I'd hope you listen to that. I hope it inspires you. I hope there's something about it is your musical sweet tooth, and that you can relate to it. And then I would just encourage anybody listening to get your dreams out. Go for the things you want to go for. I think you're doing that, Alec. A lot of people talk. A lot of people have dreams. They say, I'm going to do it next year. I'm going to start the podcast next year. Do it this month. Do it this week.
Let's go for it.
And I love just that you did this pod, man. And I think it's going to be really entertaining for a lot of people. And that's what I'm trying to do with my music is get my dreams out. And so I would just encourage anybody listening that go for it. Do the same thing.
Awesome. Dude, I appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Right back at you.